to our special guest, keynote, David Johnson from TVW.
Hi there, yeah, I'm David Johnson from TVW. I'm the Director of Education with TVW, and we have a few other folks here from TVW as well. We have Brett Hansen back here behind the camera, who's my colleague in the Education Department. We have one of our PTs at TVW, so he's kind of out doing a lot of the gavel-to-gavel coverage and committee coverage that we do at TVW. I'll talk about that a little bit. We have Kelly, our new Director of Marketing. So she's kind of here posting on Facebook. And then we have Peter Gayton, who's over here back by the table. He's a great friend of TVW. He kind of goes out to classrooms and spreads the good word for us. And at that table, there's some more resources about TVW. So we have a one sheet with information about our education outreach. We have our gavel pencils, which are very popular. So let me know if you guys want to if we don't have enough here, we can get you guys more gavel pencils. If you want some for your classrooms, we can do that. So, now I've been with TVW since 2007. I worked in C-SPAN's education department in Washington, D.C. for a while, but I'm a Washington State native, so I kind of came home, and TVW was developing an education outreach, so that was kind of perfect timing. Are you guys familiar with TVW? You kind of know what we're about?
No.
Yeah?
What it stands for.
What's that?
I'm guessing the W is for Washington, but I don't even know what it stands for.
Yes. All right. So TVW, so we're television, TV Washington, right? So now what is, you guys are familiar with C-SPAN? Good. So you know C-SPAN, they cover the federal government. You know, what they're known for are their gavel-to-gavel coverage, right? So they'll cover something from beginning to end, right? So you get to see all the information, right? So they're considered like a primary source. They don't have commentary on their coverage. They don't do sound bites, that kind of stuff. If you want to get the raw information, that's the place to go. So TVW is the Washington State equivalent of C-SPAN. So we cover state government in the exact same way. We do gavel-to-gavel coverage. So we have cameras throughout the Capitol, in all the committee rooms, in the House and Senate floors, in the Supreme Court. So we do the same thing. We get a appropriation from the legislature to provide that gavel-to-gavel coverage. We're a private, nonprofit organization, but we contract with the state to provide that gavel-to-gavel coverage. So TVW is a primary source for that information. Now, oftentimes you'll see something in the news, you'll see like a sound bite or a bit of someone's testimony before committee or floor speech, but you want to maybe know what the full context of what they're saying is, because they're often talking about very complex issues, and it's hard to capture that complexity in within a 30-second soundbite or if they're or a minute if they're grant them a lot of time. So if you want to find out what they're talking about, TVW is the place to go to see the whole thing. A lot of news organizations use TVW, so instead of doing process stories, they can focus on analysis and those kind of things. And TVW is the place where you can see the process kind of in action. So like I mentioned, we're a nonprofit. We do gavel-to-gavel. All of our coverage, in addition to the gavel-to-gavel stuff that we do, we also do produced programming. We have corporate sponsorship for our produced programming. So we'll do shows like Legislative Review, which is just a wrap-up of what happened in that day in the legislature, or that week in the legislature, or what happened during the whole legislative session kind of thing. So we have a show there called Legislative Review. We have another show, I'm going to scroll down a little bit, called Inside Olympia. Are you guys familiar with Austin Jenkins from NPR, from National Public Radio? Right, so he does, every week he'll sit down with some type of public policy expert or state representative, and that's an hour-long kind of discussion about the issues. So that's a kind of good place to go to get a longer conversation about the issues. We have another show called The Impact, which is really focuses, is kind of a news magazine type show, looks at the impact of legislation on folks throughout the state. So they'll often have an in-studio guest, but then go out and do packages in the field of how legislation impacts kind of folks. And so we have a lot of different topics like immigration and the vaccines and those kind of things. So that's a good place to go to find that information.
Do all those shows try and steer away from bias?
Yeah, that's a great question. So very much like C-SPAN, we're unbiased. What we try to do is to provide the best. If we're covering an issue, like let's say Austin Jenkins is talking about an issue, we'll try to find the best representatives of that issue to make the strongest arguments, and then kind of put those folks together so they can talk about the issue.
So then only the questions can influence what.
Right, exactly. So just like very much just like C-SPAN at the national level. When I worked at C-SPAN, we have a lot of folks there. Everyone has their own political beliefs, their own ideology, but we all, our mission was to leave that at the door when we entered the building at C-SPAN. We just don't talk about our own personal politics at all. Our mission is to provide the information just as clearly, as unbiased as we can. So we want the audience to make the decision, right? So we're just trying to put out clean information for folks. TVW is modeled on C-SPAN. So we do the same thing. When we step in the door at TVW, we leave our partisan views, at the door. We don't discuss kind of state politics in that way, at TVW. We don't let that influence our coverage at all. So we give equal time to the different sides of the argument, kind of thing, and let the viewers decide. So our documentaries are geared that way. We have longer form pieces, where we're not gonna come down on one side or the other of the issue. We'll just present the best arguments and let you guys make up your mind. That's kind of our mission. Just kind of briefly, I'm at the TVW website. One thing that's really great about TVW is we started in 1995 with coverage of the Washington State Supreme Court. And since then, we've archived all of everything we cover, right? So we're available on cable, but we're also available online. And all of our coverage is in our archives. Until C-SPAN released their legislative coverage archives fairly recently. Before that, we had the world's largest archive of legislative coverage. So you can go to teachwithtvw.org, go into our archives, and you can find information dating back to 1995. All of our coverage. So if you want to watch a Supreme Court oral argument, you can find it there. If you want to find some kind of floor debate or committee hearing about an issue you care about, it's all there. So we're the record. We're a record for that. But this morning we're really here to talk about civic education. So I want to try to transition to civic education a little bit. We have a larger mission of civic education for all citizens in Washington State, but we also do really focus on kind of the K-12, teachers. Those in the education department, we see those as our kind of core users. In the same way, TVW in general, we're focused on committee staff and lobbyists or legal professionals are kind of our core users. For an education department, it's teachers who are our core users. So we've created a website called Teach With TVW. And we have a lot of education programs that I'll kind of get into. But before I do that, I kind of want to just set the stage as far as kind of where we are with civic education right now and what some of the issues might be.
Like helping kids understand how to form a decision and get resources that are worthwhile that synthesize and make sense of.
Yeah.
We are living in a time right now where for our democracy and for civic education in general, there are a lot of challenges. We have faced a generation of declining investment in civic education.
When you now have a high school diploma of 24 credits, that's 6 classes for 2 semesters for 4 years of high school, and only a half a credit is required of civics, and even that half a credit can be embedded in something else, you see very quickly how we might end up with a society of students who could factor quadratic equations but can't tell you the 3 branches of government. That's a tragedy to me.
It's a public life where we're going down a slippery slope and not really quite able to say what is what and what is right in this country. And that is not a partisan statement. I think this is a bipartisan failure over the course of a generation to sustain the health of the body politic.
We have poor role models in terms of civil discourse. We saw this in the election of 2016, and we see this in the governing that's happening now.
What we want to do is to replenish the Social Security Trust Fund. You could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables. Right?
Alleged violence at an event in Montana's special congressional race. Ben Jacobs, a reporter for The Guardian, was body slammed by the GOP House candidate Greg Gianforte.
I would say that the polarization we see in our national institutions has now trickled down to our state legislative institutions.
Would you like to hear the answer or not?
No! Are you going to kiss me?
Hello, dispatch, can I help you?
Yes, I'm on my way to Evergreen University now with a .44 Magnum. I'm going to murder...
Your event will be shut down right now. Right now. Your decision.
We have lost trust for one another, and it is so important that we be prepared as citizens to have difficult conversations, to be able to debate with one another, and yet to maintain friendship and to maintain our awareness that we are fellow citizens and that we are in this together.
It is about respectful discourse. How we disagree matters.
The need for civic learning is crucial at this point in time. Too many people in our society, in Washington, young people, students, don't know how our government works and don't know when they're faced with a problem what to do about it.
If we can train our students in a way to engage in civil discourse and actually to facilitate conversations within the class, having them highlight the importance of civility in everything that they do is really important.
We have to give the next generation those tools to be able to do it well, because I think they're going to take us in places we can't imagine right now.
I think the time is ripe for looking at what we can do at the state level to support our students.
As broken as things may be in Washington, D.C., here at the state level, and certainly at the local level, we can and we are able to make change. We can and we are able to express our voice, and we still do, particularly in the state of Washington, have a politics that is open and accessible and inclusive of people across the political spectrum. And that is something not to take for granted. It is something to cherish.
All right, yeah, so this kind of a look at some of the, some of the kind of problems we're facing. Now we've been doing, I'm gonna go back to our tvw.org page and then just show you how to get to our education resource. We've been focused on education outreach since 2007 as TVW, but as kind of what in our current era and kind of what's happening with civil discourse right now, we're really excited to try to push out the resources that we've created and try to help, perhaps try to raise the level of civic discourse and try to get students to really think for themselves, to judge arguments, to be able to kind of make independent decisions, kind of those. So if you go to tvw.org, if you go to our menu, scroll down, you'll see a link to our website, which is teachwithtvw.org. So at teachwithtvw.org, we have basically 4 kind of big components. And I'm going to play a video that will kind of go into those components. But the first component are modules. So those are very short explainer pieces about aspects of kind of state government. So they look at let's say the executive branch. I'll go to the modules page right now. So we have short little pieces about the executive branch, the governor, lieutenant governor, etc. All the roles kind of broken down. The legislative branch, judicial branch. We have pieces about the Constitution, the Washington State Constitution, what makes it, what are the similarities and differences between the state constitution and the national constitution. A piece about the media, the Capitol Press Corps, and a lot of pieces about voting as well. So that's our modules. We also have documentaries, which are longer form, anywhere like half an hour to an hour, kind of deep dive into some type of issue, but really through the lens of youth who are involved in civics and government some way. So youth that are kind of trying to make a difference. So they're really demonstrating civic action and then wrestling with an issue. So you can find our documentaries there. We've won Emmy Awards for our documentary, most documentaries. Most recently, A Question of Faith, which dealt with the Electoral College. 2016 followed one of the electors, one of the quote-unquote faithless electors, as she was going through the process of the Electoral College. So you get to see how the Electoral College works, but then you also get a discussion from Secretary of State Wyman and from a professor at UW about the history of Electoral College and kind of maybe the challenges of the Electoral College in our modern age. And then we have two experiential programs, Capital Classroom and Campaign Classroom. But I'm going to go back to a video that will really kind of explain those programs.
My name is David Johnson. I'm TVW's Director of Education. Teach with TVW is a free online resource for teaching Washington civics and government. We want to bring civics out of the textbook.
We would like to see this bill passed because we feel that teaching sustainable practices should be a part of the educational process.
Engage students and make civics real.
The more information that they can get on how this country works, the better they're going to be functioning as an adult.
One component of our civic education video are Teach with TVW modules. These are pieces designed to teach various aspects of state government.
People say, hey, it's great to have the lieutenant governor here. What's your name and what do you do?
They look at the structure of state government. They're short pieces, usually 4 to 6 minutes.
Well, the people who founded Washington State were a very populist bunch, and they didn't like or trust government very much. They created, at that time, 8 independently elected statewide offices. We now have 9. And they put this very independent check and balance right smack into the state constitution to hold government accountable to citizens.
And they explain things like voting in Washington, how a bill becomes a law, the role and responsibility of the press corps. For the 2016 election, we looked at all the statewide offices of the executive branch.
In terms of the office, I think there's nothing more important than the elections function itself. What makes America great is that we are a participatory democracy. And the Secretary of State has this extremely important function of making sure that the citizens of the state of Washington have access to voting, have the information so they can cast an informed ballot, and are able to participate in our working democracy.
We think the first step to becoming an involved citizen is to learn how the structures work. They're really available for anyone to use.
Last line.
Strike everything after the enacting clause and insert the following.
Last line. The motion carries.
Another aspect of the video you'll find are Teach with TVW Docs.
This is a documentary series that looks at Washington citizens involved in civic life with a focus on youth. Our pieces will range from looking at the successful Mariachi Wenatchee music education program, which is designed to connect kids from migrant backgrounds to higher education and looking for life outside of working in the fields. We have a piece about Isidore Starr.
How do we get them to feel it, to understand it?
Who's considered the father of civic education.
And it's a never-ending process.
And we've won 2 Emmy Awards for the series.
I'm here to ask you to help me to gain the opportunity
to be a valued member of Washington society in the future.
As far as experiential civics education programs at Teach With TVW, our centerpiece is the Capital Classroom program. This is a program that runs during the legislative session. The way it works is lobbyists have volunteered to represent classes across the state. So really the lobbyists treat the classes as another one of their clients. And the students get a really rich and in-depth look at how the process works.
My class that I work with at TVW is Lake Washington High School, Mr. Dawson's class in high school civics and government.
The classes and the lobbyists will work to identify a bill to support or oppose.
We mainly just discussed in class what we thought would be something that we felt passionate about and we could have a good stance on because of the fact that we're high school students.
And we send each class a camera and a microphone, and we set up Google Hangout sessions. These are half an hour, online chats. The lobbyist will explain how the process works on the inside, give students a real look at the way a bill actually becomes a law.
This is not what I expected. I was expecting just to kind of meet up with the lobbyist to be able to talk about some policy, but as the process went on and as the program went on, it just became this wonderful thing of where my students really got this hands-on experience of, wait a second, we're just normal people, but we can actually be involved in the process.
They will know how to contact legislators, they will know how to write emails and argue on behalf of their issue.
Okay, Nate, let's go send a note to Senator Pearson. This is that note-taking part I told you guys about.
They will know who their legislators are. They will know what issues are at play in the legislature.
I've got another bill this year that I've sponsored for 8 years in a row to eliminate the death penalty in Washington State. Been working very hard on that legislation.
The program gives students a lot of tools to be very powerful and to be civically engaged. For many students, we found that it kind of turns on their civic light bulb. So whereas civics may have seemed kind of abstract and perhaps a little boring for them, oftentimes they find this is something kind of exciting and relevant for them and engaging. Students have gone on to work for state government and been on the other side of the camera talking to the next generation of Capital Classroom students.
So I check in the morning and listen to constituent emails from the night before.
Really with Teach With TVW, what we want to do is bring civics to life for students. We want to make it something that they are passionate about, something that they will get excited about participating in. All right, so that really focused on our Capital Classroom program, which, as the video says, is a real centerpiece program, for us. So we've been doing the program since 2011. It runs during the legislative session. What we do is it's free for anyone to participate, any K-12. We've had students as young as elementary school participate in the project as part of a club. But generally middle and high school level. Folks, teachers that are interested, they just contact us. We'll get them set up with a lobbyist and make sure their classroom has the proper equipment ready to go. But then it's a matter of deciding, choosing a bill, to follow. They'll kind of decide on what kind of issue they're interested in. It might be environment or education or something like that. The lobbyist will help them identify a real bill. And then they'll work that issue just like a regular citizen would do. They'll learn how to do it. So they'll learn how to write emails, as the video says. They can go testify on their bill, either for or opposed, or try to amend the bill, those kind of things. We have video conferences. We have 2 studios in the Olympia area. The lobbyists will come in and talk to the class. So usually we have 4 or 5 of these video conferences that happen during the legislative session. The legislative session starts in early January and then goes either 60 or 105 days. So during that time, it's just all about learning how the process really works. The lobbyists will have a lot of inside information about what actually moves bills, kind of thing. So they can learn how to do it. The teachers that are participating in our program use that as a project
for their civic education project to fulfill their civic education requirements. And that's one thing I'll mention is we're working right now on creating a CBA that's based around the Capital Classroom project. So, we've kind of gotten the feedback that some teachers consider this an extra, but we want it to be used as a project that can meet your state requirements, right? So we have a lot of teachers that are doing that right now. They've adapted or CBA or created CBA at their district level for the Capital Classroom project. So we're working to get that out there, on a really statewide level. We're working on it this year, exactly. So as soon as I'm working with Josh Parker at North Thurston, and I'm sure I'll be working with Cindy a little bit as well too, to get that CBA going. So our Capital Classroom program starts in January. We like to get going a little early since it's a short session this time. It's very good to get the initial connection out of the way and to get that at least kind of narrow in on a topic, because in a short session it just moves very quickly. So it's great to have the students ready to go on their bill, know where they stand on their bill, and ready to participate when this legislative session starts in early January. So we start these programs in December. So that's our goal, to have the CBA ready to go.
Do you know what grade level?
We're middle and high school, so I'm going to work on a middle and high school CBA. Just like right now, I know there's 2 CBAs for the middle school level, 2 CBAs for the high school level for OSPI approved. So we're working a CBA for each middle school and high school level. So we want you guys to be able to show that the Capital Classroom project is a way to meet that you can use a report. That it's not something you can do in your quote unquote spare time, kind of thing. So that's really what we're working on right now. So if you go to our Capital Classroom webpage, which is linked at teachwithtvw.org, you'll see just a lot of nitty-gritty detail about how the program works. There's a PDF document in there that is called the Program Guidelines that will just explain it in fine detail. We have a lot of modules that we use with the program to teach, like how a bill becomes a law and how committees work, how to participate in the state process, those kind of things. So those are all explained in the program guidelines. And then we have, I still have the links from the last session. So every class gets their own page, and all the video connections are posted on that page. So if you want to see the program in action, you can just go to the page, look at a previous year, and I have all of the archive links are available there too. So you can find really past years, all the way back to 2011. And there's contact information on the page too, so you can let us know how to, if you want to participate. So I'm going to just play one more video that really talks about some of the impact of our Capital Classroom project, and then also talks about our Campaign Classroom project, which is modeled on Capital Classroom, but it's focused around elections.
So the feedback from students and teachers that use our programs has been very positive, and we want to continue to raise the civic IQ.
The Capital Classroom experience was amazing. It really inspired our class and inspired me.
What I love about it is that they get to choose a bill that's actually going through the legislature that they are passionate about.
This is just a great way for students to see how big of an impact they can make on state government.
Ever since I was little, I've always been into politics, and I've always known I had a voice, but the fact that it could be heard was what really made me happy.
Capital Classroom has been really fun and important to me, yeah.
When we surveyed students after participating in our programs, we find that over 90% of them have a much better understanding of how state government works.
To just interact with a lobbyist and interact with the person who works in real-world situations was definitely an eye-opening experience.
You gain so much knowledge about not only your own state and your own state government, but also government in general.
I mean, I didn't even know we had state senators and representatives. I thought senators and representatives were people who worked in Washington, D.C. for Congress, but it was kind of cool. It's like a Washington government's kind of like a mini U.S. government.
Approximately 80% are more inclined to participate themselves.
It really motivated me to be a positive member in my community, especially when our lobbyists encouraged us to learn about both sides of an argument.
I like the fact that we meet 16, 17, and 18-year-olds that actually want to make a difference in the world. It's tough to do these days. There's a lot of disappointment in government from the local to the federal levels. Finding kids that might major in political science or in government or in communications to come back and replace me makes me smile.
And over 90% are much more inclined to follow issues in their legislative district.
I learned that issues that we are following, especially their issues, they have pros and cons on both sides, and they need bipartisan support to be passed.
It really puts the topics that we talk about in class into their life. And so now they understand this is why I have an important role within our society. So this is something that they can take with them the rest of their lives.
So for the future of Teach with TVW, we're going to build on our successful programs and expand them. This fall, we piloted a new program called Campaign Classroom. It's similar in structure to Capital Classroom, but this was a program that focused on elections.
Welcome. We are just days away from the end of voting, and then the balloting, the counting will begin.
You know, if they couldn't vote in the actual election, then they're encouraged to vote in the statewide mock election.
And even though I can't vote yet, it's really educational, building me up to the point when I'm allowed to vote, really being an educated voter, knowing a lot about my government and how my government works.
The mock election did have near record turnout in 2016. And we really want to increase that participation and have students go through the electoral process and really know how to vote, know how to do the research, know how to look at the candidates, so when they go to the ballot, they can make an informed decision.
My students, they're 13, 14 years old, and in the next, presidential election or in the next election for governor, they're going to be able to vote, and they need to know the reasons why they're voting for the people who they're voting for, and not just, oh, I'm a Democrat or oh, I'm a Republican, therefore I'm going to circle these boxes.
We also intend to expand our Capital Classroom program by giving classes the flexibility to be able to do the program outside of the legislative session.
I think this program should be available to more students across the state. I mean, I realize that it might be a little bit more difficult, but it's really a wonderful opportunity to learn more about the government and our government, especially Washington State.
I think the main reason that people should support this Capital Classroom program is because of how it brings in young people and makes them care more about government. Because children grow up and then they're the people that start to vote. They're the people who determine who our leaders are and become leaders themselves one day.
I mean, I would tell anybody that this is an incredible program to support because it allows students to really feel that they have a voice in our society in a way that people often say that students don't have this voice, but really I know that once you give them the opportunity to have their voices be heard and be in a real life situation, that they feel empowered by that. And as they're growing up to be, adult citizens of our country, that they need to be educated and empowered in their education to make a positive difference in the world. And I think programs like this allow them to feel that power and to feel that empowerment in an educated way so they can really go out and make a positive difference.
These students are going to grow up. These students are going to be our next generation of teachers, lawyers, professionals, business executives, legislators, members of Congress, creating that foundation for them to respect the Constitution, to respect all of this beauty, all of this place that does these wonderful things that we call laws and policies. We have to start somewhere, and this is a great first step.
So the video talks about our Campaign Classroom program. Again, if you go to teachwithtvw.org, you can find our Campaign Classroom program. We'll do this program during October with 3 video sessions, one each focused on one of the items on the statewide ballot. And again, we'll have Capitol Press Corps reporters. So students will be able to participate either live or record questions. So if you can't, your class, don't have class, during the time we're doing the live connection, you can record questions. Last year we had students just make, record questions on a cell phone kind of thing. I mean, send them to the teacher would kind of vet the questions a little bit, make sure they're good, then send them to us. And then what we did is during those live sessions, fed the journalists those questions as they were talking about the issues, and it made for like a pretty cool program, So students with their, in their car, recording questions kind of thing, and we aired that on TVW. So that went out on statewide TV and all that kind of stuff. So that was just a great way for folks to participate. And we're just like Capital Classroom, we're also working on a CBA for that as well, too. You have a question? Yeah.
With a Capital Classroom, does the class choose the issue or the law?
Yeah, the class chooses the issue. Now, one thing I will mention is the other thing we're going to implement in 2020 is kind of a different tier of Capital Classroom. Right now, we have a real one-to-one connection between the class and the lobbyist. So so the way that works is the class will come up with issues that they care about, and we want the class to come up with those issues because we want them to be invested, right? So we want them to follow the process, and they do that by, following something they're caring about, right?
Well, if you have a lobbyist who's, working for, what if you have diversity in the classroom and opinion over one particular issue? Who does the lobbyist?
Yeah, so what we have the class do is decide amongst themselves what position they want to take on that issue. So if it's an environmental legislation, are they going to support it? Are they going to oppose it? Are they going to try to amend it? But they need to kind of come down on where they stand on the issue. So collectively within the class. So that's a great opportunity, though, for that civil discourse and debate. Within the class, they could do research and figure out where they stand on the issue and all that kind of stuff. And then once they decide, yes, we want to support, this bills about plastic straws or something like that. And that's an example. With the Lake Washington you saw, that statewide legislation came from them. That was their idea. So they brought that idea to their legislator. Their legislator introduced that idea. And that got national coverage. And that was from one of our Capital Classroom classes. So yeah, the class will decide the issue. The lobbyists will just really focus on, okay, what are the bills that have legs for that issue, around that issue? Because we want something, a lot of bills will die right away. We want to find a bill that's going to try to make it through a significant part of the process. And we'll often have backup bills and stuff so they can switch to something else and not lose too much momentum. But yeah, it's not the lobbyist telling the class, it's the class deciding. Now this other sort of tier I talked about is we're going to try to have a lobbyist talk to just many more classes. So kind of break that one-to-one connection with some of the classes. So for instance, we'll have a session at 8 o'clock, whoever, or whenever, whatever time we pick, whatever classes throughout the state can make that session, then we'll have them all join. And then, so we'll have multiple of those sessions throughout the day. So like one at 8, one at 10, one at 1, whatever, kind of thing. And we're just trying to get as many students as we can. So then through technology, we can have the classes vote on what issue they want to support. So then let's say all the 8 o'clock classes choose the environment. Then the lobbyists will put forth, okay, it could be this bill, this bill, this bill. They'll vote, decide on what issue to follow, that kind of thing. So then likewise, if let's say a class wants to follow the environment but can't make the 8 o'clock session because their class starts at 9, or they want to have all their classes participate, they can pre-record questions. And then we'll integrate those into the sessions. So and that's another, that's another limitation is, a lot of teachers don't want to have one class do one thing and the other classes do something else. So we want to make it so a teacher can have all their classes participate. If they can't do the live connection, they can pre-record questions and then watch the response a little later one. So that's our kind of second tier of Capital Classroom that we're kind of working I will mention that our modules, we're working on pushing those out as podcasts because they work really well just listening to those. So those will be available soon on podcasts. And we're pushing out our documentaries on Amazon, so you'll be able to watch those on Amazon as well. Yeah, I don't want to keep you guys too long. Do you guys have any questions about Capital Classroom? I'm going to hang out here. I'll just be kind of back by the table by our gavel pencils. So if you guys have any information, you can talk to myself or Brett or Peter Gayton or Kelly. Just let us know. We'd love to have you guys join our program as we're expanding.
I'm wondering if it would be worthwhile to develop a couple of resources. One would be what we talked about earlier about is how do you find primary resources that come from different bias and how do you develop ideas around that. And the other would be a CER model, a claims evidence reasoning. Why do we do that? How does that help for us to build a strong argument?
Yeah.
And see both sides and maybe use the same information. See, they're using the same thing, but we're both saying two different things here.
Yeah. I mean, that's fantastic. That's the kind of stuff we're talking. So we have a list of modules that we're working on. And it's those type of modules that that are near the top of our list of things, pieces we want to work on. So that's great feedback. And as far as, I'm planning to go with Walter Parker. Are you guys familiar with Walter Parker? He's at UW. Yeah. So he does a lot of, exactly. I mean, he says, the primary goal of social studies is to get students to make and evaluate, strong arguments, to evaluate critical arguments. So he focuses on critical reasoning. So I plan to go to him to do a module about those kind of things. So these are a lot of kind of great suggestions. That's kind of where we're headed. It's great to hear those are things you guys are looking for.
I'm going to jump in and thank David because I want to move on. But what a fantastic presentation. I think about stuff like that.